Hello, everyone, and welcome to my interview today with a woman that has grown very close to my heart. As the author of the book, The Other Goddess, Joanna Kujawa is not only academically brilliant to the degree that we've already interviewed her 3 times for Magical Egypt, and you will see her in an episode upcoming. But the book touched my heart because of the personal stories. There are beautiful stories within this book. And one of them in particular touched my heart because Joanna had an experience that I also experienced in, I'm going to say, my youth, one of sexual ecstasy and beyond in Joanna's case. But the reason I'm talking to her today is that I find that she's most remarkable because she has been able to sustain these experiences of sexual ecstasy. And for me, not so much. Life has a way of grinding you down, of taking the excitement and passion out of your life, so that when the possibility of being able to grab this back into my life came to me, I said, Joanna, I need you to teach me. I need you to show me how. So, welcome, Joanna. I am so excited for this talk today.
Hello, Vanice. Thank you for welcoming me, and thank you for this wonderful introduction. And I think that what you're saying about yourself is not entirely true, because when I look at you and I look at many other people, both women and men, I feel and I can see that they have errors. So this is
Ah,
not, you have not lost errors, you just lost your connection to your own errors because you lost confidence. And this is what I think this course would be primarily about. I think the reason why we lose this kind of confidence in our errors, it's like very, there's so many reasons. There's another book about it, and let somebody else write it, right? It's the way, for example, the mass media portrays sexuality. This is the connection with eros, with one particular form of sexuality, which I personally am not that interested. And then everybody thinks that this is what it has to be. And this is a major, I think, problem. It is also the issue with, how we conceptualize eros. So, for example, people who do workshops normally on eros, and I'm not, criticizing anybody. Everybody does, the best. I'm just putting my own view out there. It is that they either focus purely on very kind of animalistic sexual part of eros, or they make it like holier than thou. It is actually not about sexuality, it is about motherly love or something. And I think both approaches are very limiting and not completely true, right? So this is part of this, before we even go, what is eros and so on. And I think that, so how do we think about eros? We have to let go of how we actually think about eros. So there are a few things that I actually discuss in my book, but it's, we go beyond the book now. So for example, I talk about the romantic trap. So what is a romantic trap? So we kind of conceptualize eros that it has to be in a particular attachment to the past. So for example, we had an experience of eros and we want the same experience now. But we are in a different stage of our lives. We had different experiences. Maybe we are with a different person, and we want to control the experience of eros, which is actually, eros is freedom of expression. Eros is the sweet juice of life. Eros, which is, there's this beautiful in Tantra concept of rasa, which means the juice, the essence, like the meow of life. But it's not even the meow, it's like the purr, like like it's something really inciting. So you have to actually wake up yourself to this. You should not conceptualize what is it that you want to reclaim, because people are attached to a particular concept. They want a particular experience again, but you can have so many different experiences of eros, okay, not like necessarily like this one. And part of the romantic trap is that this is basically control of eros. So for example, you went on this sexy date when you were young or whatever, in this red dress or in this red outfit, and then you want it back. So you put on this outfit, you put on the same lipstick, you put the same, try to recreate, the candlelight, the same music, which is now outdated, and so on. And you want to recreate the same experience. But that means that you want to trap Eros. And this is, you're already completely on the wrong path. Okay, so let's talk about common mistakes first before we get into this. Then you need to let it breathe, basically. So that's why later we'll be talking about invoking or inviting Eros. How does it want to show up for us? And we'll be talking about different methods, how to do this. Then there is, of course, the marriage trap or the trap of long-term relationships, which are, beautiful things. I'm in a long-term relationship, and it's the best thing that has ever happened to me. Fortunately for me, it happened later in my life. So, so I don't have, like all kinds of unfulfilled desires and so on. And this relationship is actually beautiful and perfect for me. So marriage trap is then what we do when we kind of categorize ourselves into each other into particular roles that we play. And they are just habitual things, that we do. And we don't allow ourselves and each other any freedom of exploration. Okay, and I know it sounds dangerous. You think like, oh, should I like let him to explore something? What would he explore, right? Or what would she explore? But it doesn't have to be like that. It's just even like, you can go for a coffee into a different place. You can go for a ride to a different place. You can allow yourself some separate experiences which are not sexual, but brings life. You awaken passion to life, for life, basically, again, right? Rather than being locked, it's just like being locked. That's why when time allowing, in the last part of this workshop, we'll be talking about, sexual rapture, and we'll be talking about tantric methods. And some people understand tantric methods as going against long-term relationships, but it is not that. It is just being so rigid in these relationships. That is what prevents, awakening of Eros, right? So these are like a couple of things. Another one is, it is solely associated with having sex all the time. And this is a complete myth, So just because you have Eros doesn't mean that you have sex all the time. And in a particular form of sex. And very often what happens in long-term relationships, this is what happens, that, for example, men think that, they have to perform all the time. And when I have conversations with men on different podcasts, I tell them this is not actually what Eros is about. But there's also this kind of expectation, they say, from women. And I said, yes. So I always tell women, ask yourself, what is it that you want? Okay, what is it that actually you want from this man and from this erotic connection, and from sex with this man, or, connection, basically, what kind of connection you want to have this man, and have honest conversations, because people think like he wants this, she wants that, and it's often completely untrue. So sometimes we have to, first of all, have honest conversations, then also reevaluate what is it that we want now from Eros, instead of fantasizing, when I was like 17, or when I was 21, or when I was, 32, well, this is what happened to me, that's fantastic, yeah? But now perhaps Eros wants to like show up in your life in a different way, right? So this is another thing. And I think what also happens that people confuse two things, chemistry and connection. So chemistry comes and goes. And yes, it is possible to revive chemistry, but it is unrealistic to have it all the time. It is actually biologically impossible to be in heat all the time, even for animals. That's why there is a good reason. And in fact, we are very strange beings, somebody noticed, because we are the only species on this planet that actually we can have sex all the time. Most animals just, have particular periods, and this is when it is. So this kind of expectation is completely ridiculous. It's biologically impossible. But what can stay is connection. A connection that is not only spiritual, emotional, and loving connection, but also an erotic connection. But that doesn't mean that it has to be experienced over and over again in the same way. Does it make sense, Vanessa?
I want to speak to that. In fact, I think that when I had my experiences, a lot of things that you've touched upon that I can speak to that I had when I was having what I would consider my Eros peak experiences.
Yeah.
And one of those was indeed connection and trust. There was no expectations of how it needed to be in terms of was it like pornography that you saw on or not pornography
Yeah.
even, but just like movie stuff,
Yeah.
right? There was this complete comfort and acceptance and trust and no expectation, and things just kind of grew in their own way to a level that I had never experienced before, right? And so the first thing is that it makes a lot of sense that we're trying to compare our experiences to what we're seeing on television or in the movies, right? And I remember just watching something the other day where there was this kind of angry kitchen 2 minute hot experience. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, no, that's not how I reached my sexual ecstasy,
Yeah.
right? Like with a kind of very harsh, very quick kind of almost aggressive kind of approach, right? But if we're watching that on television, we're like, okay, let's try to have a 2 minute kitchen thing. It's not going to necessarily turn
Yeah.
out the way that we hope, right? So I think the expectation that's set in the media really is a big disservice to us, right? In trying to well, darling, help me first of all. Explain what Eros is. What is besides juicy? I mean, is it that there was a movie, somebody got her groove back, or somebody got her groove back in the 80s or something? Is it the groove? Is it the juice? Like, how do you define what Eros actually is?
I think this is, for me, it is the juice. This is the basically the complete openness to life, and this is the essence of this. This is what Eros binds everything together. It's kind of joyous and at its best, ecstatic, blissful experience, right? So this is what it is, but it's basically what I'm trying to say. It's an attitude towards life.
Okay.
Because and maybe I will start with actually the story of Eros. I'm not going to get into mythology, but mythological stories, are very important because they appeal to us as subconscious, and also they explain our subconscious, they explain our desire in this case. So the story of Eros is really the story of Eros and Psyche, which in English you pronounce psyche, but it's really Psyche. So what is Eros? Eros is basically desire. Okay, and it is the moment of falling in love in traditional mythology. And psyche or psyche is emotional and spiritual self, which is often defined as the soul. So what happens? It is that it's a story of Eros and Psyche, their adventures, they're often on, and eventually they marry. So basically, this is the story of desire and soul getting married, getting the balance between the, Eros and the soul. So Eros is seeking, and this is what my whole book is about it. The Eros is seeking acceptance from the soul. It wants to reunite with the soul in ecstasy. When all our belief systems and everything that is going on in the media, and I'm not saying that, some of the horrible things are not going on, but I'm saying it's only one side of sexuality, which is for some reason promoted. But Eros as such and the soul are meant to be together. So spirituality and sexuality that are usually put completely separately from each other, actually, this is what Eros seeks, and the soul. So this is the journey both of the soul, which is the feminine usually in mythology and esoterica, and Eros, which is this kind of beautiful masculine, they're seeking to connect together. Okay, when very often what we are seeing as Eros is just the physical part, and then there's this ascetic spiritual part, and this is really disturbing, and it is really a great disservice to our being, because we are living in a form of schizophrenia, of complete dichotomy that is not supposed to be existing actually. So as sensual desire, erotic desire, and our soul are meant to join and then we are truly balanced. It is not to be rejected. And the whole, all pretty much traditional or institutional religions, I should say, because there's also esoterica, which disagrees with that, are about rejecting Eros. And this is where all perverts come from, right? Because they rejected Eros and it comes back, the dark kick. And we don't want that, right? We don't want that. So it's quite interesting because in mythology, when Eros and Psyche or Psyche finally get married, they have a child, and the child is called Hedoni, and Hedoni means sensual pleasure. So, you have to, so as I said, when people usually teach tantric workshops or workshops on Eros or relationships, very often they start with the physical. And in fact, you have to start with yourself and your attitude towards Eros, towards your own desire, towards on your spirituality, towards your body, how you see yourself, how you relate to your life, how do you relate to yourself, how do you relate to your partner or prospective partner, what do you want from your partner? Most people are completely dishonest about it. What do you want? This is what I always ask women, what do you actually want? Yes. So for example, in my book, I said, when I went through a divorce and, people tell me, oh, you need this, you need that. And I said, well, everybody shut up, right? And I was just basically locked myself in a room. I was working very hard because I had to, support myself. And in the evening, I was just, my roommates were, going out and dating. And I said, I'm completely not going through this again. So, I basically waited, meditated, and did mantra and visualized, and I was completely honest with what kind of man I want. And it was nothing what, people were telling me. I was not interested in having like a traditional family, so I was not interested in being a mother. I was not interested in a provider because I do not see myself as a trophy wife, I always was attracted to one particular man, and I described in the book what it is, and I was basically meditating upon this, but visualizing it, allowing, my desire come through my subconscious and doing mantra, and then I met the man. You know what I mean? Because I was completely honest with myself, and it happened twice in my life.
It's really interesting that you say that as well, because I did a very similar thing after, several kind of disastrous relationships. I wrote a very detailed list of exactly what I wanted, very detailed. And it was amazing because the man that showed up really was all of these things, right? And I just, that phenomena of like utilizing the desire to manifest is talked about in things like The Secret, but I mean, it really does seem to work, right?
Yes. Yeah, but you have to really go deep into yourself. So it's not even that, and we are going to talk about methods like mantras and so on, but actually you have to be perfectly honest with yourself, because what your sister wants or what your girlfriends are telling you or your best male friend is telling you is perhaps not for you, And in fact, when I met my, my man, I thought, oh, I'm going to get into so much trouble, I thought, because he was so beautiful to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was both chemistry, but it was kind of instant connection. Yeah. Like we're just glued to each other, but not like the way like Angelina Jolie and one of her, I forgot this guy with whom she had a very tumultuous relationship. It's not this kind of connection, chemistry.
Billy Bob Thornton.
Yeah. And I mean, he's hot, right? And they were hot together. So of course, but it was beyond that. It was something that it was just this sudden recognition. And I felt like I will get into so much trouble, I hope it really works, because I felt like, that's it. You know what I mean? Like, I can resist it, but, do I really want to? So, but he was what I thought, I wanted. When at this stage, first time around, I did make a list, and the second time around, I actually just kind of fantasize, what I like about men. And yes, and he just showed up, I didn't have to date and I didn't have to do anything like that. But this is basically what I'm saying. You have to be honest with your desire to start with. And you have to be honest with yourself. You have to start with yourself, because otherwise the methods that we, are going to teach in this course, you are not going to work if you're not honest with yourself, if you don't know what you want, so in some ways, especially with journaling exercises, we will help you to identify, and meditations, what is it that you actually want.
Well, look, I
Right?
think it's really interesting because if you look at most of the women magazines, particularly the younger women magazines, it's like
Mhm.
how to give a better blowjob or how to do,
I know it's
all of these things,
terrible.
right?
It is
And
terrible. I think it's just so also disrespectful to women. It's disrespectful to both women and men. Men and
yes,
women both are completely demented by what's going on in the media, one thing.
yes.
But also, I have no words of contempt for female magazines.
Mm,
Like
mm,
Women's Weekly, I don't know, I think it's in Australia. I think like this is just like pure evil as far as I'm concerned, because
yes,
it's a form of brainwashing women only to one archetype that is possible for you, or
yes,
other women, what you're talking about, and it's so disrespectful to both women and men. And this is when we talk about the methods, when we move to the area of reclaiming Eros, when we actually look into our stories of Eros and our experiences. And I always share my experiences in this as well, because when I ran this workshop before, it was, I had to basically share my original experience with, related to what we are discussing in the workshop at the moment. So when people know what is, oh, okay, and I feel safe to share this as well, right? And this
yes,
is what she means when she says, remember first experience of Eros. She doesn't mean like that, but she means this. So this
yes.
is what we do. But basically, when we move to the methods of Eros, it is first of all, you have to start with adoring yourself. Okay. So, for example, you tell me that you lost Eros, and I completely don't see it. You somehow lost confidence in your ability to express your Eros.
Mm, mm,
And that's really sad, and it's normal. It happens, it very often happens in long-term relationships, or for me, it happens when I'm really busy.
yeah.
When I'm really busy, I get caught up, like, and in things, and, then I also lose Eros, because I'm just so caught up, I don't pay attention to myself, and I'm not talking about looks, I'm talking about my inner self.
Inner self, yes. And
Yeah, inner self.
I want us to stress that. I think, darling, what the point I wanted to make, and this is where we're going, which is perfect, is that these magazines are telling you how to fix this stuff on the outside, and it's not
Yeah,
going to do it, right? What we
yes.
need to do is turn the lens inside, and this is where the work starts.
It is the confidence thing, and I'll just give you an example, because like we were just talking about it before the show. Like at my age, I'm just learning how to put on a makeup more or less properly, right? And because I was never, but I do take care of myself, but not, like they tell you in fashion magazines and stuff like that. I always kind of went from the inside, and that's why I didn't lose Eros. And I'll tell you, it wasn't like when I was in my 20s. In fact, it was quite recently. I woke up, I was in a very good mood. I just, was thinking, had a good interview. I was just, it was a beautiful morning. I had a good meditation, and I just decided to go for a walk and, to have a coffee in a cafe. I was by myself, and I put in this kind of nice pink summit dress that I had, which was very feminine, but I put on this dress not because it was feminine, but because I was in the mood for this dress. And I had sandals and I had no makeup. And I have a tendency to have messy hair, okay? So I just went for a walk in the morning, and I am just like one with the birds and the trees and the sun and, sea breeze. And boy, it was like I was like a magnet for everybody's attention. And then, because I was in a very wealthy neighborhood, and where all of this, I'm not saying because it's not about competition, I'm just saying what actually Eros is energy. So I'm answering your question. It's energy of bliss, it's energy of connection. So there are all of this, trophy wives, pure perfect makeup, really expensive clothes, and who got attention, right? I got attention not because I'm better looking or, I know how to do makeup better, because I have no idea. Okay. but I had the energy of openness and joy and bliss and love of life. And I love myself and I love my body and I love, everything around me. I was in a very good mood. Okay. But it was like a magnet. And I had like sandals on, I just came back from a beach. So it was like sand on my feet. Wow. So, it was nothing what the magazines are telling you about, right? So it wasn't like my hair was fashionably messy or something. It was just, wind in my hair and so on. So, and I noticed then, and then I kind of contemplated on this for a moment, and I thought, wow, Eros is really about energy. And, I could see people like looking at it and thinking, I want more of that. People were looking at it, at the energy, they felt the energy, and I could feel them saying, I want more of that. And there is actually a danger in it as well, because then they also start looking into that from someone else. So when and I fell into this trap as a young woman, because once I had it, people just wanted more of that. And I then couldn't have it because I felt I had to deliver something. Just so when they're around me, they get this. But that is within you. That is without everybody who was looking at this woman then, who was, in the summer dress and sandals and messy hair and without the makeup. She was just feeling like connected. She felt the inner eros, which is basically a sense of connection with life. And instead of chasing this woman or chasing this man who has it at the moment, you think, how can I get it from here? And then you don't have to do all of the tricks, put on a special makeup, buy expensive clothes, buy sex toys, it will come to you because you have found it here.
Yes.
Yes. So sometimes in this kind of workshop, we also look at the moments, did you have this kind of experience? And then, go back to this experience and what happened? You see, this is when you actually surrender to the flow. It is not when you try to manipulate it, like in what I call the romantic trap, for example. Like, what if I dress? So if I wanted to recapture this moment in an artificial way and it would not work, I would try to put on the same dress, wait for the same weather, go to the same cafe and look at everyone. Yeah, my hair messy, and would look at everybody. Are they looking at me? Are they getting my eros? It's a disaster. So disaster and embarrassment, and completely because you're disconnected from your inner, from the inner and flow of life. And this is in our previous interviews, we're talking about actually Kundalini energy, which for me it is the goddess energy, and this is such a lovely energy. And especially men love this energy, and so you just have to discover this energy in yourself, like this energy is there and it's very feminine. By its name, it's feminine because it's actually Shakti Kundalini, which means goddess Kundalini. It's feminine from the beginning, middle, and end. And this is the privilege of your body as a woman to carry this inner energy. You just have to tap into this energy. Instead of looking outside, because people are telling you, the whole fashion industry and cosmetic industry is telling you, and stupid Hollywood films, that this is what you have to do to get this, but you'll never get it this way.
All you get?
It's a pretense of this, and the 2 minutes, quick 2 minutes in the kitchen. This is what you're discussing. Even if you get this,
Well, this is my question for you, because the idea of, we'll get to invoking in a minute, but the idea of Kundalini as a goddess, right? And in the workshop, we're going to be working with a number of goddesses, and some of them I have a sense of, and some of them I don't really even know. But my question is more, how does working with a goddess help you connect with your Eros inside?
Okay, thank you. So this is actually a very good question that, I was planning to discuss as well, because, we have such limiting archetypes of the feminine, and that's why, I said the other goddess, not the ones that you hear normally about, right? So, it is like the mother archetype, and then there is a archetype of a sex kitten, which is like you have it for like 3 days in your life, right? Even if you want it. And then, you have an archetype of foxy lady, which is a little, you can keep it for longer. But these are like archetypes that, are very limiting, and not everybody wants to be a mother, sex kitten, or a foxy lady. And then I think we forgot. And in fact, I make an argument that they were actually completely suppressed for some devious reason. The archetypes of the feminine that are completely different, which are the archetypes of ancient goddesses. So it is very good that you are not connected to some of these archetypes, because archetypes are basically cosmic energies of consciousness, so to speak. And each of us is embodied in a different way. That's why we are so interesting, all of us. So it would be really weird if you were relating to all of these archetypes, unless you have a split personality, right? Because although we are complex, so I can say I relate maybe to three. Like when we speak about Greek mythology, as a young girl, I identify with three goddesses, and I kind of merge them together because I thought they were just too radical separately. And we can talk about it. But I mean, these goddesses are actually archetypes available for us that were suppressed or ridiculed or demonized even. Sometimes in YouTube you get comments like you think like, oh my goodness, like you evil just because you even look there, So these goddesses, and then some of them, and that's why part of the workshop will be looking into these archetypes of the goddesses, because some of them will appeal to you and some not, or it could be, like in the past, I was quite identify with one goddess, for example, Artemis, which is the goddess, of freedom for me, and travel and nature. And now I do not identify with this so much because I've done that, been there, done that. Do you understand? So now in your life, in this moment where you are, with which archetype, which cosmic energies of the feminine do you invoke in your life? Because these goddesses are representatives of different energies. That's why, again, we're coming back to being honest with yourself, because you have to know yourself, you have to be honest with yourself, so you actually invoke what you want to invoke at the moment. Yes? What is it that you want to invoke? These goddesses are extremely important, and they are fun, and they are very powerful. So we spoke before, but they are very powerful, they are very fun, but they are very real. Yeah. So in esoteric, so you can invoke them, but you have to be respectful. It's okay, it can be playful, like with Eros, but you have to be very respectful, because in all esoteric traditions they warn you, be respectful, because they are not going to take it lightly. They are powerful energies. So, do not invoke Kali if you're not ready for Kali. I see so many young women. I hope you know what you're doing, okay? Because she's a fantastic goddess, but like, can you handle it? Because most people can't, okay? So that's why we look at different archetypes, and I know that you created amazing, beautiful images, of these goddesses, and then, be honest with yourself, not like, oh, that would be nice. No, what speaks to me? What speaks to me, like Audrey Hepburn is nice, but it's not me. Do you understand? Like, so what's the point of if she were a goddess, but we are looking at real goddesses, not Hollywood, goddesses, I would never invoke her, although, I like her elegance and charm, but I am completely different person. You understand? So this is the same with, we are going to look at these different archetypes, playfully, but also respectfully, and be mindful that each of them has invocations that we have for them. And some of them have mantras, depends from which tradition they come. And, but always, use them, wisely, right? Because they are very powerful. Use them wisely, use them respectfully, playfully, but wisely. Invoke these energies. So I was very lucky because I was associated with a spiritual mentor for a very long time from one particular tantric tradition, and he actually granted me a name of a goddess, you know, because we all got like a second name that I've never heard of before. And I had to do lots of research on her. And then it took me many years to integrate it because I had no idea that I had anything to do with her until I realized that most of my disasters in life, romantic life, came because I have not acknowledged that I had it, you know. And then when I started to use her mantras, you know, now I feel that I'm in possession of this, you know.
Yes.
It's not mine, it's hers, but I'm embodying it consciously. Okay, so it is really important to be honest with ourselves as we are going through the workshop, you know, because we have a beautiful, you know, plethora of archetypes of goddesses. Which one is that appeals to you, or which one would you like to explore? It's also okay. Like, I had lots of women in a workshop who says, "Oh, I would like, you know, people pronounce her name differently. It's a Greek goddess, Circe or Kirke. You know, depends from which tradition you come, which is a really a goddess of seductress." And so many women says, "Gee, I wish, you know, just you know, explore it a little bit." That's it. You know, explore it. You don't have to be this all the time. You can explore it, you know. I've been there, done that, and you know, I don't have to go there. But lots of women, I realize it's almost like a longing, you know, wouldn't be nice, you know, like to explore this archetype when you empowered, you know, in this. You know, we can invoke, you can eros and you know, and play with this, you know, and charm people, right? There's a great power in it, and it's you know, as long as you don't try to hold on to this. So this is, but it's just a side note. And there are some women who are just so hurt and rejected Eros so much in their lives that they said, "Oh, none of this appeals to me. You know, I'm a priestess, pure priestess of, you know, like a Vestal priestess or Hestia." And that's your choice. But then this workshop, let's be honest, is not for you, because if you're not interested in invoking Eros, why go there, right? Like, I mean, there are other aesthetic paths, right? And we are actually not discussing those goddesses or those aspects of those goddesses, because which are, you know, respectfully important as well, because this is not part of this workshop. So thank you for this question about the goddesses, because it is a very important part of the workshop.
One of the other things that I think is really important for people to understand is that when you're using words like invoking, for example, the connotation there for some may be one of a magical association. And what's very hard for us to understand these days is that magic has been a part of humanity's existence from when we started up until about 300 years ago. And at that point, the Enlightenment came in, science came in, and these kinds of processes have got pushed, particularly in the West, to the background. But just because they are not in fashion right now in the West, just because they're not understood, does not mean that they're not very tangibly real. And so I'd love for you to explain to us tangibly what your experience is when you're doing this that proves to you that it's real.
Okay, so first of all, before even we go there, you're right. Not only that in the West it was rejected, it is being there are two things that happen. Three things. One, A, it was rejected. B, it is being vilified. And C, if it's being practiced, it's only the dark part of this that is practiced. And I just want to say there's a dark part to everything, including a prayer. So you have to be very careful, you know, everything. So actually, speaking of goddesses and invoking, so when we talk about goddess Isis, for example, I explained in the other goddess the difference between magic, low magic and high magic. And this, for some reason, people just kind of, you know, process it, you know. Anybody who interviewed me about it didn't even mention that, I think. So it is like lower magic, which is what is currently practiced in most places who still, you know, honor magic. And there's nothing wrong with it, but it has a dangerous part. Why does it have a dangerous part? It is that you play with material elements that are already in existence. So basically, if you want to create something, you have to give up something else. And it may be not up to you what you're giving up. So there is a price to pay. And people tell the stories. They got a publishing contract, but somebody died. You know, it can be very powerful because it's kind of exchange of energies. And, you know, it's not immoral necessarily, it's amoral, which means like, I don't want to put a moral judgment on this, but there's a price to pay. It's kind of karmic relationship, you know, because you are dealing with limited physical energies. So if you gain something, you give up something, and
it's a transaction.
It's a transaction. Hey, you know, buy yourself something, you know, you have less money in the bank, you know, or, you know, like this is this kind of situation, energetically speaking, on a physical level. So this is the lower magic. And this is what modern kind of witchery and so on often explores. And, you know, they honor old European tradition, which actually came from Isis when Isis was divorced from her higher magic. Okay. And lots of people don't want to listen to this because, and I understand why, because, you know, witchery was demeaned for so long, you know, so for wrong reasons, right? Because it was a way of demeaning the feminine and, you know, and the, you know, intuitive part of our consciousness. When higher magic is invoking, speaking to the divine mind, so to speak. So you already rearranging cosmic energies before they materialize. Okay, so it is a little bit like appealing to higher energies before they are in the material world. So it's like speaking to the matrix in a way, like changing the algorithm. Okay, you change the algorithm by certain repetitions, for example, such as mantras, or they could be called, some of them are like basically affirmations, and I practice them in my life, you know, because it sounds like I always had Eros, but I actually created Eros in my life. I invoked Eros in my life at a certain stage. Okay, so I can share this. So it is a lot associated with our self-talk also, you know. So words, you know, there is a good reason why, you know, the word was at the beginning. This is how it starts. How do you spell yourself every day and your relationships? What do you say to yourself, to the world, to Eros, to goddesses, to your man, the one you have or don't have? So I'll give you an example. I met with someone, a very attractive woman, you know, probably my age, and she, you know, complained that she, for a long time since her divorce, she's, you know, alone, and she says, you know, if it doesn't happen to me this year, it's never going to happen. And I said, this is such a terrible affirmation. And I said, you cannot say it. You're spelling yourself. You put a bad spell on yourself. That's lower magic, but it's also higher magic because, you know, it's higher mind is listening. And, you know, and guess what happened? 2020 happened, and a pandemic. You know what, right? Like, so she couldn't get out and stuff. Or another woman told me, oh, you know, all the men are horrible, you know, there are more women than men in our age. And I realized, wow, that's a bad spell. She's bad spelling her again. Because I will tell you what my spell is, which I somehow naturally develop, or maybe I worked on it, and it is, for me, this is my self-talk, but it's also my experience, and I'm sure they're connected. The world is full of interesting, handsome men. And in my world, the world is full of interesting, handsome men. I bump to them everywhere. And I am her age. Do you understand? Yeah. I am not 25. I'm a mature woman. Yeah. And guess what? So this is how are you spelling yourself on your daily basis? If you say this, or all men are like that, well, guess what? All of them you meet like that, or no, we just have like a friendly relationship. We don't need Eros in our life anymore. Well, why would he come?
Yeah. Right? He's not invited.
And I actually realized that it's kind of you know, double thing here, Eros and he, right? Why would he come? Since, you know, you don't need him.
Yeah.
You know? So very many things are coming here. But first of all, one is you have to respect you have to love yourself. You have to focus on things that you like love in your life, and if not, change them instead of whinging. Okay, which is very difficult because I've been a whinger on many occasions too. It never worked for me, by the way. Every time I whinge, it just gets worse, okay, because it's bad spelling. And you have to respect Eros. You have to love Eros to invoke Eros. Why would Eros come to you when you think other women who have it are sluts? Men just go after this kind of women. You're bad spelling yourself all the time. In my age, bad spelling yourself again. Oh, it's all about sex. Why would Eros come to you? Anybody, if you were talking like that about your friend, she would say, look, I don't want to talk to you. You talk behind my back all the time. No, but seriously, yeah. I mean, why? If this is your relationship with your sensuality, not necessarily even sexuality, or with sexuality at large, it's something disgusting or low, why would it come to you in any attractive way if you're not open to exploring other versions of it? If everything
It makes perfect
sensual,
sense, darling. It makes
yeah,
perfect sense.
if
Yeah.
sensuality is something that is horrible, why would it come to you?
But it
Yeah,
also sounds like Eros, you can have Eros in eating, perhaps. Like
yeah.
when you go to a restaurant and you really enjoy the juiciness of the
Mm,
food, or painting and
mm.
enjoying the art. Is this
Aesthetic
true?
eros, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. So my spiritual teacher once said, this is, people think tantra is only about sex, but not. He says, like, eat your pizza, and says, oh, that's a divine, I'm experiencing goddess Shakti Kundalini when I'm eating this pizza. If you can get to this point, baby, you got it. Okay, all the time, and then you got it also in your intimate relationships, because you invite it. You invoke it on so many levels, but it's really important. The practical methods are important, like, for example, how do you speak about men to yourself, about relationships, about sexuality, spirituality, what is possible in relationships? That, you just bad spelling yourself, or you good spelling yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
say I'm eternally attractive to my partner, or man, which I once did in my 30s, and I started to do it, and hey, things really, really changed. Okay, it's actually that easy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
mean it. And if you don't mean it, you repeat it. It's like with mantra. And I was raised as a Catholic, so mantra makes sense to me because we had rosary. So first you start and it's like, yeah, whatever. And then you say, hey, I'm getting it. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you have to convince your mind because it has all of these blocks, So you can just, like, first it on an automatic, but then it just becomes a new tape in your head. And you start to communicate in a form of higher magic with cosmic consciousness that now I am there. This is my new belief, and you start creating this. And then you don't need the makeup, you know what I mean? You don't need the expensive clothes. You don't have to have injections to have, plump lips like when you were 17. Or I was just driving with my man, and there's this times, do you want to get rid of your wrinkles? And I said, no, thank you. Why would I get rid of my wrinkles? I have no need to get rid of them. You understand?
That's a
Yeah, that's my life.
revolutionary thought, my darling. Revolutionary. I mean, we're going to destroy so many industries if
And
women were
so we
able to
should.
find their Eros.
And so we should. And I think another method, because we have moved already seriously to the method, is, because I'm just checking my notes, is apart from adoring yourself, and and be also outrageously yourself. So, but again, who are you? What do you want? Yeah. So I just very often discovered it just because sometimes I have no filters, and I because I'm a writer, I'm academic, and I'm a little bit rebellious. Sometimes I blurt up something, although I've learned to be more diplomatic with age, and I realized that this is who I am. So just be yourself. and also adore yourself a little bit. And it doesn't mean like spending money on things, but I don't know, like occasionally like a nice dressing gown. And I maybe share, I have a fetish, I don't care about shoes and stuff like that, cosmetics, but I love lacy bras.
Yeah.
And I always did, and I always had them. And if I live to 96, I will have a lacy bra on me, okay? Because I just like them,
Yeah.
okay? So just, whatever brings up the goddess, in you. And I love books. I spend immense amount of money, on books, because I'm outrageously myself, I don't. So this is, what do you do? Like, so that's me, right? And I refuse to be boxed, like, because I'm academic, because I'm a writer, I have to present myself in a particular way. Yeah. So of course, I have to be diplomatic, and, I know how to behave in different situations. But, I carry a part of me, somehow there, So for example, I speak my opinion. I have to sometimes adjust it to the audience, because, I don't want to create a backlash, right? Because then nobody listens to what you're saying. But I'm still true. I just adjust my message, but I'm still true to the core of the message. So you have to be yourself, know who you are, know what you want. And the same if you want to invoke this eros in your relationship, because we'll be talking about it in this workshop as well. It is also adore your masculine.
That's a big one.
Adore your man, and masculine, And I was thinking that perhaps the reason what I always get nice attention from the masculine is because I love masculine. So this is a normal, I don't have to say I love men. I never cheap, right? Like, yeah. I never have to say it. It's just how I converse with, men, how I treat them with respect. They know I like them. I appreciate the masculine in its different forms. And if I don't, I let them know, okay? I have no
It's
problem.
very trendy right now to really slam the masculine. You know what I mean? Everybody's talking toxic masculinity everywhere.
That's wrong. That's completely wrong. There's one type of masculine, that has to be, which is like the abusive masculine, right? That there's no place for it. But I mean, men are in a very difficult position nowadays because they feel like they have to give up their masculinity to be in a relationship with a woman. I don't want to personally be with a man who had to give up his masculinity, because it's something is very serious loss. Why? Yeah. So then, yeah. So you are very right. So adore your masculine. So I always in esoteric Hinduism, which is a form, and part of this is a form of classical tantra. There is what is called Shiva energy, which is the masculine energy, and I always was very attracted to Shiva energy, and it doesn't have to be sexual necessarily. It is, just adoring. Sometimes I love how my man walks. For example, I know how he speaks. He's a New Yorker and he has this kind of slight New York kind of way of speaking. I forgot how you call it. It's kind of like almost like wisp or something, that I notice New Yorkers do. I think it is so sexy, and there are different forms of masculine, and maybe one we could do a course, even a workshop on this, forms of masculine, that are beautiful, that are sexy, that are protective of the feminine, that are, and I realize, and again, who you are and what do you want? Because women say, oh, I want, with him to go to my yoga class and do, my mantras. And so we meditate together. And then I want him to ravish me all the time. Well, and I want him to make lots of money too. So when I want to have a baby, I can have like a regular middle class. Oh God, who can carry this? Do you understand? Like no man can possibly fulfill all of his expectations. Yeah, provide a yoga meditator, sex god. Yeah. So de-delude yourself. You know what I mean? Be honest, with yourself, So I say, because actually the first rule of spirituality is take responsibility. Okay. So no judgment. Who you are. What do you want? Now let's get real. These are the methods. Yeah, the methods are good, but not if you're completely dishonest about yourself or completely delusional, like, for example, that. Yeah. And maybe this might kind of exist, and if you focus long enough on this, you'll get it. But I think we have to be honest, because we as women are also brainwashed to, like, what is possible. And so are men. So they categorize us into now wife and a whore kind of thing, right? Like the girl you like and the really like sexually like, and then this is the girl you marry, which is how demanding it is. But we do the same things to men. So we have to basically start from scratch. And this is what these methods are really, right? And if it is really, and so especially, also I think that being older, for example, in my case, is a great advantage, because I had experiences, my partner had experiences, and we love to share our experiences without any jealousy, like telling ourselves stories, because we completely trust and respect each other. Yeah. And we also are attracted to each other. We have both chemistry and we have connection, so telling each other stories and being honest with each other. So for example, I realized that people don't talk about it. Like, even like when we go to the deepest level of what I want on a daily basis or what I like sexually, people don't talk about it. They assume, so men assume all of these things about women. Like, I have to perform all the time. That's why I cannot have sex, because I cannot perform all the time, right? So they shut off, or they go into porn sites, because at least they don't have to do anything. And the same what women do, they think, oh, this is what they want. But okay, like, what do you want? What do you like? Let's have honest conversations about that, right? So these are very basic things, but which basically all of them talk about basically forgetting all the brainwashing, de-brainwashing yourself, right? So basically deculturating yourself, because we are all enculturated in a particular way about what is masculine, what is feminine, how we have to be with each other. So just forget all of this. Who am I? What do I want? What archetypes I want to invoke, right? From myself, from the feminine. How can I invoke Eros in my life that is, suitable for me? How can I adore my masculine? What kind of self-talk I have to have about myself, about my masculine? What I want to create in my life? We have to start from that. But we have these ancient archetypes that help us. How can I connect my body, my soul, and my desire, rather than pushing it on a side, right? And that's how we invoke Eros.
It's like the goddesses give you training wheels, a way to connect back into it. That it might be daunting for you to try to like create a goddess out of yourself with no inspiration, but to put your feet in their shoes and understand the way they react in the world gives you guidance on a way to play with Eros.
Absolutely. And that's why I really love the images that you created for this workshop, because there is actually ancient method of meditation or invoking, which is through the image, which is in Latin is called visio divina, which means you just focus yourself on the image, of the archetype or of the divinity, if you want to call it, or of a goddess, or God, and then, you invoke it just by like contemplating on it, just like adoring it, right? You invoke it. That's why it's really important to know what is actually available there in the form of archetypes, which are energies, which are real life energies, cosmic energies, so you can invoke what, you want to invoke, right? And exactly. And then, how does she carry herself? What does she do?
Yes.
And you don't even have to research this. It's just by even meditating the image itself, your subconscious, your soul will be speaking,
Yes.
to you. So
it'll build out the entire picture for you.
That's right. And you start to invoke these energies, and when you start to embody them, So I think another method is basically, which is misunderstood by many people, is flirt with each other, because people try to make each other jealous. And I flirt with him, and he flirts with her. This is nonsense and waste of energy. Flirt with each other. Like, we've been together for a very long time. But I'll give you an example. Recently, I was going to work and I just like SMSing, like young people do. Why do you have to be different? And we SMS each other all the time. And I said something, I love my handsome man, right? Because for me, he is so handsome. I'm not pretending anything. And he's just try hard to get to me. And an SMS is, oh, because you're only human, with a smile, right? But I know him, he's just playing it, right? Just responding to my, oh, right? And I said, oh, baby, but I'm a goddess, right? And he says, true, with a smile. So we flirt with each other. We don't have a need to, like, I don't need to flirt with this guy next door, so to get my man's attention, because I actually just want my man's attention. He has no need to look for attention from someone else, because we keep it alive in small things. So part of the methods, like everyday thing, like it's all twisted. It's all there. All the methods are there. We're just using them, in the wrong way.
I actually love that because I was watching some YouTube and the gentleman was talking about married couples basically get to a point in their relationship where it's just like, I'm up, I'm going shopping. Can you fix this? I'm going to bed. Can you take out the garbage? Like our conversation becomes limited to this ridiculous, um, just routine information about the state of the household. It's such a tragedy. So to introduce this kind of
Yes.
flirtatious
And
conversation
that's
is
why
wonderful.
it's also important to do think different things together, like even go for a coffee to a different place, because sometimes you wake up and you sit across the table and like coffee and, oh, what are we eating tonight? And just go for a drive, go to a cafe, there's a guy with a dog, and something is happening. Go for a walk in a different area, but also allow yourself to have this other little exploration separately. So I go to the city, I'm with my students. I love being with my students, and then I come back and I have stories about my students, or I tell him something what happened in the interview. He's telling me something else. So it's okay to do things separately, but it has to be, of course, built on trust, right? But once you have this trust, like keep it alive. You have to be alive yourself. So unless you alive yourself and you allow yourself to do things sometimes separately, like for example, maybe I like to go belly dancing, and he of course not going to go for belly dancing, right? He can do some other thing, but when we come back and we are just alive because we did something that made us alive, so we are alive to each other,
Yeah, I
right?
love it,
And rather
Joanna.
than like we have to do everything together, we go to the gym together, we have matching t-shirts, and we have this like everything the same, and it's good. Friendship is built on this, but if you want something more than friendship and a routine, you have to keep it alive, and they are not big things, right? They are not big things.
I have to say that this is so exciting to me, Joanna, because we haven't even touched the surface of what you're going to be teaching. And I already feel like I have a full class. And I know so many things already. And I think that, what really is important is that we kind of start to learn to shift the focus from the outside to the inside. And when we do that, then we're in a place where we can bring on all of these techniques and tools that you have for us and these beautiful goddesses. But unless we actually start shifting the focus to the inside, and like you said, be authentic. I mean, that's a huge lesson just in today, right? To be authentic. But all that you've given me to think about, I'm just going to brew on that. While we're waiting for the course to begin in November, because there's so much wisdom there, darling. So thank you. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you so
Now,
much.
but just wait. Just wait. There's more. I honestly I can't wait to actually go through the process. One of the things that just kind of really pushed me over the edge was Joanna was telling me about a story of a mantra that she uses and the effects that it has. And I'm like, I want that. Tell us a little bit about that, darling.
Okay, so but I'm just giving away a little bit here, right? So because the name I was given, when I was initiated to this particular tantric tradition was Sundari, and I didn't know anything about this particular goddess Sundari, and she's one of the archetypes that we are going to discuss in our workshop. And and there is a mantra for Sundari. So I started to say this mantra, and at the beginning without conviction, because being a writer, traveler, an academic, thought, I had to be completely different goddess, goddess of wisdom, of course. This was in my head, right? So I thought, oh, who is this goddess? And I started to do the mantra, Lalita Tripura Sundaryam, Lalita Tripura Sundari Namaha, and I started to say, and just Lalita Tripura, and I'm like, ooh, I started to feel, energy is moving, right? And I started to Lalita Tripura Sundari, and I started to do it in the garden, this beautiful butcher birds started to come, and they started to sing, and butterflies started to come. I'm serious, okay? Lalita Tripura Sundari Namaha. And I started to feel like, I feel like, hey, like something is happening in my body. And then, I had a bus ride on a bus to work. And, I was just in my head doing the mantra. I had headphones with some, nice music. And then I was doing this mantra for myself. And I felt like, again, like it really kind of agrees with me. Okay, because I was initiated to Hellinage, right? And then I see in a bus people like more and more people in the bus, and they kind of start looking at each other, and I feel like, and I think, what am I doing? I better stop. I don't want to get anybody into trouble because I know what I'm doing it. I'm just making myself feel good. But I see people are caught in this field now. And maybe we are not exactly ready from Lalita Tripura Sundaryam, So I was like, I better stop it because this field started to grow. So once you get in touch with this archetype, and for me, this archetype also came through initiation and so on, not only like the life around me, like natural life, started to come to me, but people actually on a bus, although I was saying it just in my head, I didn't even move my lips. The field started to grow. Mind you, I've been doing this mantra for quite a while recently, but I just want to say it started without conviction. And then I started to feel it, and I kind of got into the groove, and now it's natural. It's almost like, like you have a song in your head, right? Except that this is a conscious song. This is evoking of conscious energy. It's like a hit in your head, right? And then you create a field. Okay, that's the method, or one of them.
I can't wait to get mine. I mean, I honestly have no idea what goddess I want. So that's why I'm going to do the work and figure out authentically what it is that I want. And so I'll do that between now and then. And then, I mean, I want to do a mantra too. Well,
Your own
goddess,
goddess, because you may have a different goddess, So,
yeah.
so because you shouldn't. So this is actually very good. You shouldn't want what Joanna's got, or you shouldn't want what Mary got. You just, what is it that who you are, and what do you want?
Yeah,
And
I want
then
my version of
yeah, that's right. That's better. Yeah. So this is exactly your version of that. Right?
that
And some of
exactly.
them are more mysterious, some of them are more playful, some of them are very subdued. That's very sexy too.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah.
It really depends on, your personality. And it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that the subdue one is any less sexy than the loud one. It's a different
No, lots of men love
vibe.
it. It's like a bit of a challenge. It's a little bit what's behind this, good girl thing. So,
Oh,
it all has its charm. Charm, you see, charm. Yeah. And depends how you deal with this. Are you dealing with on a lower level of energy or higher level of energy? Right. So we are back to what we spoke before about different types of magic.
it also sounds so much fun, darling. I have to
Yeah, I
say, it
hope
sounds like
so.
it's going to be fun. Well, thank you so much for
Thank you
talking
so
to
much.
me today, goddess. And
Yes.
I can't wait. So thank you. Thank you for sharing this. And I hope that we'll see lots of you lovely ladies in coming to play with me to find out who your goddess is and to invoke Eros back into your life. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was lots of fun.